Hi, and it's time to cover second round of the US Chess Championship. Now in the first round we had wins from Wesley So and Nakamura. And the first game we're going to look at from the second round is between Wesley So and the veteran Alexander Onischuk. Now Onischuk lost against the Kopian in the first round in a very exciting game, which was covered on my channel as well. But let's have a look at this game. So Wesley So, the reigning US champion, has the white pieces and he opens with e4. So we'll go quickly over the opening. It's a standard Ruy Lopez or Spanish game, which has been seen thousands of times in top level and amateur chess. So bishop e7. Now the most common move here is rook to e1, and I'm just going to set up analysis. Rook e1. And we have seen thousands of games with this. Black and castle c3, and now play d6 or the marshal. But in modern chess, it seems like the marshal is a bit of a threat, like a drawing threat. So people tend to deviate at earlier points, and Wesley goes for d3 here. And the resulting positions are very similar to what you would get from an Italian game with bishop c4 on the third move. So okay, d6, c3. Not much to say here. Both sides are getting castled and playing normal moves. There's rook e1 for white, bishop to g4, and white gets on with the standard development of this knight, which always goes to f1 and then most likely g3. And now a little bit of to my mind, an unusual maneuver. That is the most common move. Bishop h5, bishop c2, and now he played knight b6 here, which I haven't really seen before here. It doesn't make super much sense to me. I mean, what is the knight doing here? It's clear that white wants to initiate operations on the king side by going knight f1, knight g3, and try to do something there. So I'm not really entirely sure what this knight is doing. It doesn't have any good squares or any prospects on the queen side, and it isn't really doing much other than perhaps facilitating a d5 break or getting out of the way on the king side. So I don't know, this just seems a little bit weird to me, but okay, let's see what happened. Knight to f1, d5, knight to g3, and this comes with tempo. If black takes, white is really happy. He gets the bishop pair, which is in modern chess an advantage that can be nurtured. So bishop to g6, holding on to the two bishops. And now white wants to avoid the queen trade in case of d takes e4, so the queen gets out of the d file, queen to e2, rook to e8, and now Wesley played bishop e3. And here, after queen to d6, this for me is the first interesting moment of the game, and also what I think is a very instructive moment, both with my students and when I'm browsing through forums on the internet. People tend to ask a lot about when and why should you be exchanging a bishop for a knight. So in general, bishops are considered better than knights. So when do we exchange them? Because here Wesley So played bishop takes b6. Onischuk of course took. And I want to talk about this moment because taking on b6 is not about black getting double pawns. This is not a big factor. I mean, he can play b5 here, and it's not a weakness that can be attacked. The thing is, very often when you exchange a bishop for a knight, you do it to control a color complex. And what's happening here, once you take off the knight, which was on b6, if you go back, this knight on b6, it's covering a light square. You know, by default, a knight on a dark square, it's controlling a light square. So here, once you take on b6, you lose a defender of the d5 pawn, this one here. And this means once the bishop comes to b3, it doesn't really have resistance on this diagonal, and it will bear down on this f7 pawn. And look at this. To facilitate the bishop coming to b3, Wesley plays h4. The idea is to eventually play h5, kick this bishop. So okay, black makes luft for the bishop, h6, but now the bishop comes to this dangerous diagonal, bishop to b3. So Wesley gave up the bishop pair, but the main purpose was to gain control of a color complex and attack this weak square. So once you give up the bishop for a knight, you know, make it, you know, there has to be a purpose behind it. And here it's to control the light squares. Okay, you can't really defend the pawn on d5. Okay, you can take on e4 or play d4. Onischuk went with d4 because at least it gives him some chances to maybe get some black squares, but it's too slow. C takes, knight takes, and queen takes, and now queen g4. And now we see the ideas that white has. It's h5 coming, knight f5 maybe. Look at these arrows. We're coming here, incoming, and yeah, this is a big weakness. Queen d6 was played. Note that this is not an option. You just give, okay, it's a pawn, but you're just giving tempos. This rook with tempo, it's coming to f3, attack on f7. I think another guy to the attack to f7. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, no. My arrow's playing some pranks on me, trolling me. But you can't allow this with tempo. In chess, sometimes time is more important than pawns, and here definitely the time is more important, and Onischuk realizes that and doesn't take the pawn. He plays queen d6. Now d4. Again offering a pawn, but if you take it with a queen, you're giving a tempo. With a pawn, you're giving other options. So king h8, getting out of the line of fire. Yeah, I should mention that. Yeah, of course, queen takes g6. Can't take with the queen. So king h8 makes sense. But now rook a to d1. And now all of white's pieces are active. You know, wonderful bishop. He can play h5 at some point. If and when he needs, he can play knight f5. And the rooks are on the central files. Great position for white. But here, perhaps black could have stayed in the game with e takes d4. And white is still better, but black can fight. But inaccuracy by Onischuk, he plays queen to f6. And from here, it's really difficult because Wesley has a forced sequence. He plays h5. This kicks the bishop. And now d takes e5. And it turns out that this queen cannot keep control of the f7 pawn. So after queen takes e5, bishop takes f7. Mind you, with tempo on the rook, so rook to f8, and now queen e6. So black never had time to capture on b2. Now the queen has, threatens the trade, and the bishop on e7. So black has to accept the trade of queens. At least he does it on his own terms, bishop to f6, and then takes on e5. But now Wesley, he's up a pawn and plays rook to d7. And yeah, this is a safe pawn up position for white. If black were to, he doesn't have time to take on b2. The bishop on e5 did one very good job, and it was to stop this pawn. If he takes on b2, e5, and you can quickly see that e6, e7, and e8 is coming very quickly, and black can't do anything about it. So bishop takes b2 was not an option for Onischuk. He played rook a to d8. Wesley took on d8 and played b3. Just solidifying his pawns on the queen side. Rook to d7, bishop e6, and perhaps one inaccuracy too many. Onischuk played rook to e7, but I think if he plays rook d2, he gets a similar position to what he got in the game. Let's say a4, takes, bishop g8. It's a rook ending, similar to what happened in the game, but at least he has an active rook here and can harass white's pawns, you know, at some point. Instead, in the game, we saw rook to e7 by Onischuk, and you'll quickly see a similar position. Bishop d5, Onischuk took on g3, and bishop g8. Again, Wesley goes into the trade on his own terms. Takes on e6 now, and king e3. And you can see now in the other line, black had the rook on d2, but now he has it on e6, and white has activated his king. So clearly a much better version for white here. He's up a pawn, but can he make anything of it? Somebody said all rook endings are drawn. Tends to be the truth, but not in this case. Let's see. Rook to f1, cutting off the king. So black tries to break out here with g6. But Wesley takes. Okay, maybe g4 was a better move. But h takes g6 has a very clear idea. After rook takes g6, rook to f3. The king is still cut off. So Wesley thinks that he can now push his e-pawn pretty safely, with or without the king, most likely with the king. And if the black king can't join, the only idea for black to defend is to exchange rooks, but then black will get the winning, white will get a winning pawn ending, which is more or less what happened. King g7, e5, rook to g4, king to d3, making way for the rook when we're ready. b5. I don't know if black can defend here, but in any case, after e6, it's looking like a winning position for white. Rook g6, e7. Here Onischuk flicked in a check, but after king e2, he resigned. And the reason for that is simple, but it's still instructive. Like I said earlier, the only way to stop the pawn is with the rook, but then you have to accept the rook trade. You have to take on e3. True, you will win this pawn, but it's too little, too late. And white has a very simple plan here. Note that this pawn majority here on the queen side, it's completely ineffective. This 3 against 2 can't make a pass pawn. So all white will do now, even though the pawns are equal now, he'll play g5, g4 and then g5. Okay, black makes a move, g5. And once you trade, we have a pass pawn, and this will decide the game. The simplest way is simply to abandon the pass pawn, just roll over to the queen side, pick up everything, while black is busy picking up this, and then we have a pass pawn that will make a queen. So Onischuk didn't have to see this, both guys knew what was going on, so we had resignation. So a nice win for Wesley, who now has 2 out of 2. Looking good for a repeat crown, but it's too early to call it. But certainly a very, very nice start to the tournament by Wesley So. And I'm looking forward to see what's going to happen. And I hope you guys stay with me. If you like the video, if you like the channel, if you want me to continue to cover the channel, you know, share the video, like the video, leave some comments. And I'm looking forward, guys. See you. Bye-bye.